be with us today. He's preoccupied with another engagement at the African Union. But we're just going to start off with a few questions to reflect on the question of Kiswahili language, the importance of Kiswahili language for African unity. Not just in terms of its cultural significance and how interesting it is as a language, but what is the substantive and deeply important importance of the language for African unity. And with that, I'm going to request Dr. Fafa, Executive Secretary of ACALAN, to give us a few thoughts on the importance of this language for African unity. Over to you.
Thank you very much for that interesting question, pertinent. And I greet you all and congratulate all of us, UNESCO, the African Union, for this gathering to commemorate this inaugural edition of the World Kiswahili Day. Now, the Kiswahili language is an African language. And African language, a Bantu language with terms from Arabic and other Bantu languages. And for the African Union, right from the inception of the Pan-African Organization, the decision makers realized that African languages are indispensable for the development and integration of the African continent. This is the reason behind why the charter of the OAU, initially, Article 29 of the OAU Charter states that the working languages of the organization and all its institutions shall be, if possible, African languages, then Arabic, Portuguese, and English. And then after the transformation of the OAU to the AU in 2002, that very article has been reproduced under Article 25, exactly saying the same thing. And again, the institution, the establishment of the Inter-African Bureau of Languages in Kampala in the 1970s, again, right at the beginning of the life of the organization, shows that languages, African languages, are important. Now, when it comes to Kiswahili language, and then subsequently you have the African Academy of Languages, which was established officially in 2006. And when it comes to Kiswahili, ACALAN, we will come to that. We developed the Dar es Salaam Framework for Action. The director of the director of the Department of Social Development, Sport and Culture and Sport said it here. This Dar es Salaam framework is a call for a general commitment of the member states of the African Union to tell them that we should implement this Article 29 and subsequently 25 of the Constitutive Act to make an African language a working language of the organization and a language of wider communication in Africa. We developed this Dar es Salaam framework in 2019, and subsequently the Kiswahili has been adopted by the heads of state and government of the member states as working language of the African Union and the language of wider communication in Africa. ACALAN continued to organize a regional meeting to determine the ways and means of implementing this very important historical decision. And this shows that Kiswahili is very important. At that meeting, I told I said something to the participants that Kiswahili has the particularity of belonging to all Africa now. Now that it has been adopted by the AU, African Union, as a working language and a language of wider communication, we should all come together to make sure that Kiswahili becomes an effective working language and an effective language of wider communication in Africa. This means that we need to produce interpreters and translators. We need to have this language used in the education system as language of instruction, not only as a subject. We want to teach economics, physics, etc. in Kiswahili alongside other African languages. So Kiswahili is really important for the African continent. It is a powerful factor of inclusion. The director said it here. And in the region, Kiswahili is a lingua franca for a highly multilingual region of 200 ethno-linguistic communities. About 200 million people are speaking Kiswahili in the world. Kiswahili is an important ingredient in fostering diversity and inclusion in the region in East Africa, and it's propagating to other parts of Africa and the world in the diaspora. Kiswahili has the ability to unify and globalize from below and has evolved democratically, not by force, through language policy without any form of discriminatory representation that perpetuates inequality or exclusion. So therefore, Kiswahili is paramount for the African Academy of Languages. This, for the African Union, I wanted to say, and this is why the African Academy of Languages is promoting Kiswahili as a language of wider communication and subsequently to a lingua franca for the African continent, which will enable us to speak with one voice.
Dr. Dampha, I'll come to you in a minute with regard to how your organization, Akalan, is promoting and is enabling this language to be better used, to be what you're calling an effective language that is of use, not just a language that people hear about. I'm going to come to you in a moment, but before I come back to you, I'd like to recognize the presence of Ms. Ana Elisa Santana Afonso, who is the former director of the UNESCO Liaison Office to the AU and the ECA, and she's the president of ReAfrica, who is online with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
Ms. Afonso.
It's my pleasure.
Let me ask you, thank you very much. As we are trying to understand the importance of Kiswahili language for African unity, and I'd like to ask you to please, in just about 1 minute, help us understand how is your organization, what is your organization's view of this language, Kiswahili, as a language of unity? What is your organization doing to enhance this idea?
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity. In fact, I cannot really tell you what our organization is doing at this moment, since it is a very young organization, and which the objective is, in fact, to rethink, to reinvent.
And ask you, beyond this sort of celebration, we have kicked this off today, beyond this celebration and this acknowledgement and validation of this language as an African language, our language, as said by both Ambassador Camille and Madame Afonso, how do we increase the capacity to have this language as a functional language that is well utilized? What are your thoughts on what Akalan is doing in this regard in terms of promoting this language in higher education and in other areas? Please give us a little bit of a hint as to what your plans are or what you are already doing so that we can appreciate that effort. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much again. Thank you very much again for that very interesting question again. Now, the African Union adopted Kiswahili as an official language of the organization right back in 2004. So it was, it has been an official language, but it has not been an effective working language of the organization. Now, this proclamation of UNESCO on behalf of the United Nations, it's like a godsend for us, because we have started producing the Dar es Salaam Framework for Action right back in 2019. And from that year, each year we attribute the major part of our activities to the development of Kiswahili. Now, we work with Kakama, that's Kamisenia Kiswahili Afrika Mashariki of the EAC, the Kiswahili Commission, and the Bakita in Tanzania, Baraza la Kiswahili la Taifa, which is our national structure there. Now, we developed this Dar es Salaam framework, and subsequently, the heads of state adopt it as a working language and the language of wider communication. Right from there, from February, immediately, we organized the first regional consultative meeting in Kigali for East Africa, for the East African region, where we invited all the actors, the media, the institution, partner institutions, etc., and then to try to sit down to develop a guideline, because Akalan has its Kiswahili Vehicular Cross-Border Language Commission in the member states where Kiswahili is spoken. And the EAC has its Kiswahili Commission, and Tanzania and Zanzibar, they all have Kiswahili councils. We all come together to try to see collectively how we're going to go about this thing, because we don't want it to be simply rhetoric. We want to implement it. And then the heads of state said, by 2023, July, we should implement this resolution. And then in Kigali, we came up with recommendations which might be interesting for you. And we say that embassies of Kiswahili-speaking countries, for example, Tanzania, Kenya, should set up cultural centers and promote the teaching of Kiswahili in collaboration with all the institutions involved to try to promote this language. They said, Akalan's proposed Kiswahili Writers Competition. We proposed a writers competition, the prize for excellence for literary works in Kiswahili. We should implement it. We said we should implement the implementation and the resource mobilization committees that were identified during that meeting. We should form this thing to try to guide Akalan and all the institutions to implement this very important program. The regional economic communities, which are the building blocks of African integration, should also take the lead to work on this thing. And then we say that our initiative to have goodwill ambassadors for Kiswahili in the regions, in the member states, should be implemented to help us to mobilize resources for the program. Singers, writers, performers, celebrities should be included as assets for resource mobilization. The key activities, there are two branches of the adoption. One is Kiswahili as a working language. That means the African Union, in addition to English, French, Portuguese, and Arabic, should have Kiswahili pronounced during meetings. Documents should be produced in Kiswahili. The website of the African Union should be in Kiswahili. It's not only be saying website under construction. So this aspect, we need to have translators and interpreters that would materialize this aspect of the work. So Bakita, Kakama, Akalan, and all partner institutions, according to the recommendations, would come together to work with the Pan-African University that has a translation and interpretation unit, and Akalan also has a Pan-African Center for Interpretation and Translation. We all collectively come together in a Pan-African spirit to try to produce, to train interpreters and translators. The second volley, the second branch is Kiswahili as a working language, as a language of wider communication in Africa. If you want to use a language as a language of wider communication in Africa, you should teach this language in the education system. You should use it, not only as a subject, as I said, but we should teach, physics, chemistry, economics, anthropology, and all those things in Kiswahili. So this, we are working with the universities, and we are campaigning advocacy in member states, and we are working with partners to try to revise the language plan of action for Africa, which is the blueprint of the African Union to develop African languages. And Kiswahili is going to have a central role in this language plan of action for Africa. And then the language plan of action for Africa said African member states of the African Union should develop vigorous and articulated language policies. And that these language policies would have Kiswahili central in them, and then, the education system would include it. So this is what we are trying to do. We say charity begins at home. We would not only talk about Kiswahili. Akalan doesn't produce any document today without Kiswahili. Kiswahili is our number one language, and then we have English, French, Arabic, and Portuguese, which go along. And then our website, we're developing, we're translating, and then we will do all these things and then continue Kiswahili. This Kiswahili program is a co-program for the African Academy of Languages, and we will continue with the support of member states, and we are pleading to the member states to attribute funds for this Kiswahili program, because without funds, we can't realize the objectives of, transforming Kiswahili as a working language and a language of wider communication in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It sounds very extensive, and I think we don't even have the time to explore the depth of what you're trying to help us understand in terms of the work you've done, the policy, the framework you're creating for the future. We hope, though, that next year, this time, we'll have seen a lot of progress in this regard, and that you can then let us know what has happened as a result of all the work you're doing. We'll see more support from member states who are here and our partners in ensuring that this language does not just come as a language of celebration, but that it becomes a language of use, a functional language that is utilized as a language of instruction, as a language of business as well. I would like to ask if there's anyone in the audience who has something to say and who would like to either ask a question or make a comment on the question on the role of Kiswahili as a language for peace, for integration. You can ask any of the panelists